Lots of NHL news and rumors to take a look at in today's video. Today's rumor focusing on teams like Vancouver, Boston, of course, the Philadelphia Flyers, Columbus Blue Jackets, and a few others. Plus, could John Gibson finally find a home elsewhere besides Anaheim? We'll discuss the latest on him. We have another goaltender, Askarov, making his Sharks debut tonight. We also have some big updates on some injury fronts, including Alexander Ovechkin. We're going to discuss the big hit last night on Matthew Knies from Zach Whitecloud of the Vegas Golden Knights, and Hockey Canada might have found a loophole to address its goaltending at the upcoming Four Nations Face-Off tournament. We'll discuss what goaltender might be in the mix that we never thought of coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about today. Lots of injury updates, some key rumors and trade stuff as well. And first, though, I want to start by talking about the big hit that happened last night. That's not going to result in supplemental discipline. Of course, Toronto and Vegas had a very important game last night. The Leafs won the game. They shut out the Golden Knights. It was a great overall game by Toronto. Vegas, for the most part, played pretty well as well, but couldn't get one by Joseph Woll. But there was a huge hit that I know Leaf fans were not happy about because it resulted in an injury. But at the end of the day, according to the Department of Hockey Operations and the ones who review all these plays, and many of the fans, especially non-Leaf fans, this was a clean hit. So we saw Matthew Knies, of course, coming down the wing with speed. Of course, he's hunched over because that's just your skating position. He's got the puck. Defenseman Zach Whitecloud comes up. He tucks his elbow and leans right into him. The body up here, upper body in the chest area, to me, takes the brunt of it. There is some head contact. And when they determine legal hit versus dirty hit anymore, they're not just looking at the focal point of contact here as well. They're looking at a variety of things. Did he leave his feet? Was there intent? Those types of things play a big role here as well. And you can look at, and I'll show you a picture here, a still image, as Whitecloud's just beginning to make contact. His feet do not leave the ice. I know I've seen a lot of Leaf fans saying today that he jumped and launched himself at Knies and got him right in the head. That's not what happened. I know for some fans struggle to look at things objectively when it involves their favorite team. I don't know why that is. I did see some Leaf fans saying yes, as much as we don't like the fact that Knies got hurt. It was a clean hit. But Whitecloud does not leave his feet. Now, oftentimes you see people on these big hits, you get a big collision. Of course, you got to remember there's this thing called physics. And within that, when you get two big items colliding like that, oftentimes you'll see one of the players lowering the boom here or laying the hit will often leave his feet after the collision as a result of the impact. That's what happens. So you can't pause the video and show him in the air after the contact is made to fit your agenda. That's not how things work here. So Zach Whitecloud's hit was clean. They called it a major on the ice so that they could review it. When they review it, they get on the horn with hockey operations. They reviewed it and they're like, yep, no, clean, hard hit. Unfortunate outcome, sure. But it's not all about the head contact if it's the focal point. And in this case, it was not the focal point. There was some. That's unfortunate. And I suspect that Knies might be concussed. We don't know. I know he had to leave because of that concern, and he did not come back. So therefore, I assume that there must have been some cause of concern that he may be concussed. I don't know if there's any other injury in the play. It's one of those things. But unfortunately, the game of hockey is a very fast sport. It's a collision sport. You got big boys in there laying their bodies on the line at these high rates of speed. Sometimes clean plays results in injuries, and it sucks. And it sucks for the team you're watching, that you're cheering for. But, a lot of people are trying to compare this to the Reeves hit that get a 5-game suspension earlier in the week. It's not the same thing at all. Not even close. Ryan Reeves' hit was directly and pretty much only on the head of Darnell Nurse. And you could tell the way he changed his, it was a missed time hit, missed angle as well. Lots of things about the Reeves hit could have been avoided. And I know Nurse himself, he spoke to the media today. He feels like he was targeted intentionally. that Reeves could have avoided hitting him in the head, and he did not. Not the same thing at all. So I just don't really think that two things really should be compared just because it involves the same team. I see people screaming from the rooftop saying this hit gets you a 5-game suspension, this hit gets nothing. Now, one thing I did not agree with was the fact that after everything, they rescinded the major penalty on Whitecloud, which I thought was legit, but then Vegas ended up going on a power play. So the Leafs got more penalty out of the roughing and the chaos that happened afterwards from the hit than Vegas did. I thought that should have been evened up. I don't think Vegas deserved a power play afterwards. That I did not like. But clearly, I can understand his teammates coming to his defense, but you shouldn't have to have a clean hit be resulting in a huge fight and huge melee every single time either. I'm not really a big fan of that. Some cases I can understand. Things happen so fast on the ice too for the player's perspective. They may not know if it was clean right away. Even like for the fans that are in attendance, and they do show some replay sometimes on the Jumbotron, but like you don't get the ability right away at least to kind of look at things from all the different angles and all the different replays and be like, okay, you got to come to grips with it here. Just because it's your team, you got to take the goggles off and look at things clearly and objectively. And the way the league sees it, which is the way the rules are, and you see many former players chiming in on this as well, they played the game. They know the rules. Not all the fans do, unfortunately. It's a clean hit. So that's just my take on that. I've had so many debates on social media today that I'm just kind of getting tired of explaining myself. But unfortunately, I feel bad for Knies, but there was nothing dirty about the hit. A couple of other things that happened today that was one really good thing, actually. Pavel Datsyuk's being honored in Detroit tonight for his Hockey Hall of Fame induction, and he actually ended up signing, which I didn't see coming. I don't think the team really announced this ahead of time, but Datsyuk did unretire and sign a one-day deal to retire as a Red Wing, which, I mean, obviously that's where he played, for the bulk of his career, and certainly what everybody's going to remember him by. But obviously his contract ended up getting traded afterwards, so when he left to go back to Russia and all that. So it's just nice to see him retire as a Red Wing. That's where he belongs. Nice to see him recognized in Detroit. Some big injury updates today. Freddie Andersen, of course, we know has been out for the Carolina Hurricanes. We know a little bit more information now. He had to have a knee procedure, and he's going to be out 8 to 12 weeks. So that's looking at a minimum of 2 months, maybe 3. So, if you do the math on that, you're looking at, December, January, February, like he should be back for the end of the season, but that's a significant layoff. Now, if it's closer to the 2 months, it might not be quite as bad. Of course, there's a bit of a break in there for the Four Nation Face-Off tournament, so it won't miss quite as many games, but still, that is a significant injury, and it's no surprise that we're hearing the Hurricanes linked to maybe trying to find a more experienced goaltender to kind of solidify things there as well. The other big update we got today was on Alexander Ovechkin. We know he was originally called week to week, but now we have more details. He's dealing with a fractured fibia, and they're saying 4 to 6 weeks. So he's probably going to be back. I would say you're targeting, there is games between Christmas and New Year's, and that's probably in the range that we're looking at if everything goes well for him. Obviously, I wouldn't completely rule out him hitting the Gretzky record, towards the end of the season. It really boils down to what kind of pace and how he plays when he comes back. If he plays at any kind of pace that he was at the beginning of the year, I think he's got a chance to do it. If not, then it's probably going to carry over and be a little bit short going into next year. Some other injury updates as well. The Blue Jackets have reactivated Kent Johnson, so he's back. The Oilers are going to be without a couple of middle six wingers here. Zach Hyman and Victor Arvidsson both going to be out. They're calling Hyman out 4 to 7 days, and Arvidsson is out, I think, more on a day-to-day basis. Vegas, for tonight, they're playing Ottawa on a back-to-back. They are going to be without Alex Pietrangelo. He is out on a day-to-day basis. And the Avalanche have reactivated goalie Alexander Georgiev. He's returned, and they've resent TJ Tyner back down to the American Hockey League. With those Oilers updates as well, they also recalled Josh Brown, who was sent to the American Hockey League yesterday, but he was brought back up along with Drake Caggiula. Of course, we've already seen lots of other things going around here, lots of other talk around the NHL today, but one storyline to follow tonight is going to be the San Jose Sharks. They're a fun team to watch with their young talent, but we're going to get the first glimpse of Yaroslav Askarov in a Sharks uniform. He got recalled, and he will be making his Sharks debut tonight against St. Louis. So obviously we want to see just how NHL ready this kid is. I mean, obviously he's been tearing it up in the American Hockey League for a couple of years, looking for that opportunity. Wasn't getting it in Nashville, got traded to San Jose, and definitely somebody they view as the goalie of the future. So I'll be curious to see how he makes out in his first attempt with them at the NHL level. We heard from Pierre LeBrun today saying that for the Spengler Cup coming up in the spring, that there's likely still going to be Brad Pascal and Joe Thornton will be managing things from Team Canada's side, and they expect Gerard Gallant to end up being the head coach for that tournament for Team Canada. Speaking of Hockey Canada, there is a goaltender that's being under consideration for the Canadian team for the Four Nation Face-Off that nobody's really thought of, at least up until obviously Hockey Canada has, but many people that I've seen looking at the projected rosters and predictions and everybody who's been talking about it has not thought of this goalie. We keep hearing Jordan Binnington, Aiden Hill, Logan Thompson, and they're all under consideration, and they very well could make up the trio of goalies that are on the team. I mean, they may even go with two goalies. We don't know. It's a 23-man roster. They're going to take two for sure. Obviously, how they decide to do up the extra players, will they take one D, one forward, one goalie? Will they take two forwards and a D and then just two goalies? We don't really know. It's not a lot of games, so clearly they'll have to choose accordingly here. But one name that's having a pretty good season and could be the wild card here is Joey Daccord in the Seattle Kraken organization. Now, many people say, well, Joey Daccord's American, and technically he is, but he's also Canadian. Joey Daccord was born in the United States. He has citizenship from being born there, but neither of his parents are American-born people. His dad, Brian, is Canadian. Of course, lived in the States for a long time because he was working in Arizona for the Coyotes for a long stretch there. Obviously, had his own business, goaltending and all that. So, he's worked in the States for a long time. But his Joey Daccord's mom is actually from Switzerland. His dad, Brian, played over in the Swiss League for an extended time when he was a pro hockey player himself, and obviously met his wife over there. So we get a Canadian and a Swiss-born couple who end up working in the United States, and that's where Joey was born. So technically he's American, but he's never represented Canada or the U.S. internationally. So, once you have that opportunity, once you pick a country, if you have dual citizenship, you can't change it and jump around. But he hasn't had that opportunity yet. So, he's had a really good season with Seattle. He could be a wildcard here. It was confirmed by the Hockey News that he is indeed under consideration. Obviously, he would have to want to represent Canada as well. I mean, clearly, I think he'd love to get into international hockey, and knowing the American goaltenders he's got playing ahead of him, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon for him to get an opportunity. So maybe he'll embrace his Canadian part of his life and join Team Canada. We'll have to wait and see. But certainly a wild card that we never saw really coming. Lots of other news and rumors around the NHL. Let's focus on Boston here for a second. Of course, we saw the big coaching change. I know a lot of people that don't agree with the fact that Montgomery lost his job, but at the end of the day, it was the easier move for the Bruins. I know I saw an article from Marco D'Amico with Jimmy Murphy contributing as well, looking at the fact that, this roster's on Don Sweeney. Don Sweeney's been there a long time, as is Cam Neely. And could Don Sweeney be the next to go if Joe Sacco, who's taken over behind the bench, doesn't immediately get some quick results here and get this team turned around? And I have to think it's a real distinct possibility. I mean, clearly the Bruins have high standards for themselves. They don't accept the idea of not being a playoff team and, obviously losing some of the games the way they did this year. So I understand in a way why changes were needed, but at the same time, it's just hard to imagine a coach that had that much success with that kind of a winning percentage was so easily let go. Now, they had mentioned as well that, and Sweeney did in his news conference, that they had contract negotiations because he was in the final year of his coaching contract and it didn't go well, so they weren't sure things were going to go. Elliot Friedman, in his written blog today for 32 Thoughts, said that he had heard that regardless of before the Bruins even felt that they might need to make a change, that the negotiations didn't go well because Jim Montgomery himself wasn't sure about Boston. I don't think he was completely certain that he wanted to remain there. Obviously, he wasn't allowed to kind of put his own staff together, which was probably something that wasn't, favorable to him and whatnot. But it was kind of, already leaning that he may not stay anyway. And knowing that he may not stay, I guess, does change things a little bit. But at the end of the day, you got a really good coach. You would think that they might try to cater him a little bit more and get him to stay and get him extended, but not so much. Now, of course, as we know, they could end up moving some players around. There's still lots of talk about that. I know one of the players that is getting attention, according to Pierre LeBrun, that there's numerous teams. We talked about Montreal being probably the most frequent one. They get the most media attention, but teams that are looking for players with an edge, and Trent Frederick falls into that category for sure. Frederick's obviously a gritty forward, plays physical. His offensive numbers have improved over the years. He can play, third, fourth line. He can drop the gloves. There's lots of things he can do that cause teams to be fond of him as a player. Hate playing against him. You'd like to have him on your team. He's not signed beyond the current season, so he's certainly drawing attention. Doesn't mean that the Bruins are going to move him, but he's definitely a player that LeBrun says that other teams are kind of monitoring and looking at. And, if things don't really go well here for the Bruins and don't improve, you're probably going to see some movement within the player world. And I would suspect where he's not signed, that he very well could be one of them. So we'll have to look for that. The other big thing that Elliotte Friedman made mention of in his blog today was obviously Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm haven't worked out the greatest so far in their early tenure as UFA signings in Boston, but he suggests the fact that maybe Boston and Vancouver talk about trade and send Zadorov back to Vancouver. He said, Vancouver is really missing Zadorov. Clearly, since he's gone, they've been trying to replace him, haven't done it, and things have not worked out in Boston. Now, of course, he knows that it's a lot more complicated than that. Obviously, from a cap perspective and a trade perspective, it wouldn't be easy to line up, would not be easy to do, but certainly suggesting that, maybe things should have stayed the way they were. Did Boston go out and overspend on Zadorov and Lindholm? They absolutely did. Those players are good. They are obviously guys that can bring good value to the team, but they're also players that appear to be decline, especially in the case of Lindholm. Zadorov played amazing for Vancouver in the playoffs last year, so it's became a fan favorite, and a lot of people were not happy with the fact that he wasn't able to work it out to stick around and stay. Now, Friedman doesn't make this comment with any real knowledge saying that it's being discussed or anything. At least he doesn't let on if he does know anything, but clearly early in the tenure here, it's something interesting to think about. I mean, things are not working out in Boston. If they don't turn around quick, and Vancouver is looking for that defenseman who they, had in Zadorov and has not been able to replace, you have to wonder, would they have those conversations? It's an interesting thought. For sure. Now, according to thefourthperiod.com, the Columbus Blue Jackets are definitely exploring the market on youngster David Jiricek. And if they do make a move, they're going to be looking for a big return, as we know. Ideally, a top 6 scoring winger who can play in the NHL, ideally right away. Somebody who's on the younger side of things as well, who, like a controllable asset. So that seems to be kind of what they have in mind. Now, I know in Columbus, Ivan Provorov is also getting a lot of attention, according to Pierre LeBrun, saying that he expects Provorov to probably be your top defenseman traded at the deadline. But even though many, many teams have inquired with the Jackets so far on his services, that they're not quite ready to move him yet. They want to give the team a chance to, to see what they can do and be a little bit deeper into the season when they know for sure that they're not going anywhere before they make that trade. So it's pretty much expected that he's going to be moved pretty well for sure, but it's just a matter of where he ends up. So obviously Jiricek is in a whole different scenario, whole different situation here, but certainly somebody you want to keep an eye on. Lots of teams out there that are either rebuilding or coming out of a rebuild could greatly use a top young right-handed defenseman with size and skill. So we'll see what the Jackets decide to do, but certainly a couple more situations there to watch out for. LeBrun also talked today around John Gibson, talking about the fact that, the Ducks are going to be looking to get a deal done here for him, and that a couple of teams he mentions that might be good fits would be Carolina and Colorado. No big surprise there. If Georgiev continues to struggle like he did early in the season, they're going to look to make a move. There's no doubt. And Carolina, without Freddie Andersen for upwards of 12 weeks, that makes sense that they would be trying to find somebody as well. So hard to say. I mean, I know in Anaheim, they're a team that's struggling. I know, for example, some comments today from Ryan Whitney and Paul Bissonnette on Spit and Chicklets were talking about how the Anaheim Ducks players in the locker room there is just not in a good state at all. They're not fond of head coach Greg Cronin. A lot of the players are really frustrated. They don't enjoy the way he coaches, the way he yells at them, the way that they're trying to be taught how to play pro hockey. There's a lot of conflict there, in one of the worst locker room situations they described across the NHL. So you have to think at some point here, some of these guys might kind of want out. Obviously the Ducks and Gibson are one thing to be watching out for, but you have to wonder what else is going to go down there in Anaheim. I mean, obviously, Greg Cronin's an older coach as well, has lots of experience, and I know Pat Verbeek hired him because he's not afraid to be that tough coach, the older school guy. But there's, from what Whitney and Bissonnette are saying, that's not what the players want or think they need at all, and there seems to be a major disconnect there. So that's certainly a situation for us to kind of monitor here as well. Lots of talk as well from TSN that the Philadelphia Flyers and Morgan Frost appear headed for a divorce. The Flyers have scratched him numerous times. He hasn't played a ton. Doesn't seem to be a Tortorella guy. We could have said that last year as well. Obviously, a team like Chicago, Nashville, they're heavily looking for centermen. I have to think they would probably show some degree of interest because the price tag is not going to be super high, and a player that they can probably get for without paying a ridiculous price. Morgan Frost is kind of getting up there at a stage of his career where he's not really a prospect anymore, but he's not really an established player either. He's kind of somewhere in between. Philadelphia's given him some time, but we haven't really seen him get a full run under Tortorella to really see what he can do. So a player that's very much likely going to be traded sometime throughout the season as soon as they find the right deal. So lots to talk about here today. Of course, like I said, the Ducks situation and their locker room appears to be pretty bad. Could the Canucks bring back Nikita Zadorov? Lots of other things to talk about here as well. Could Frederic end up on a team like Montreal? We heard about the gritty forward and the Bruins. If they go into sell mode, would Montreal be a team that would be looking to take advantage? I'll have to wait and see where things go. Let me know your thoughts on all today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.